We're going to talk about how people beg to be poor. Now, I know that's kind of a harsh title, and it's probably going to be very triggering for a lot of people to read that, and it's probably clickbaity as well. So, hell, let's make some money with it as well. Uh, Beg to be poor. That's kind of like I saying, people are wanting to be in this position of not having anything in their life. And that is not likely to be the case for just about anybody. Now, I granted there might be some people out there who really enjoy being homeless, being out there on the streets, doing the thing that they do. I'm not gonna knock it if that's what if that's what they want to do with their life, whatever. But I'm assuming that most people don't want to be in that kind of position. And that most people would probably want something in their life. And when it comes to having something in their life, they just if they have nothing, they just want the simplest things. Like I remember when I just wanted a car. I just would love to have had anything to drive around because I didn't have any kind of vehicle whatsoever. And when I ended up with a $500 Toyota Corolla, I was very thankful, and I drove it around for years and made videos in it. And I didn't care about getting any kind of fancier vehicle because I was so thankful for having that cheap car. And it didn't matter. Like for some people, it matters. Like they have to have a nice car. Now, when you think about being poor and needing something in your life, food, shelter, clothing, kind of some of the basic necessities, this is what people really, really want in their life. But people need in their life. Everything else is going to be a want. And so when you think about what it is that can happen out there for people to strive to get these things for themselves, because that's really what it comes down to when we think about this from an economic point of view. It's like, how easy can you have access to all the things out there that are produced by the other people? And what is it that you can do with your skills and services in order to acquire those things out there in life? It doesn't seem too hard, right? Like you trade your stuff for their stuff, and we figured out a means of doing that. Usually it's done through the form of currency. So when you think about what it is that people are doing out there that creates a life for themselves where they really just don't have anything and they are begging for help, because what ends up happening when you enter money into the system is you create a situation in which that people, the most industrious ones, are going to begin to produce and save. That's like what natural human instinct is to do. And when you start to produce and save, what you are going to do is you're going to start separating classes. You're going to have people who are going to have more than others because those who are producing and saving and being the most industrious at it are going to be able to produce and save the most. And those are going to be the ones who have, and then there's going to be some out there who have not. And that's where the separation in the class really can come down to, is just simply as that, how people have access to that new money and what it is that they do with that new money. See, like if you have a bunch of people who are working hard every single day to save money to buy a car, how much would a car really end up costing? But the moment that you start throwing financing into it, now you have people who have a whole access to not only their savings, but then the ability to finance. And how many people are going to start doing that who have access to that new money, and what is it that they are buying, and how much can that price possibly go up to when it's all being imagined out of thin air into the ability to buy it, when now those people are competing against people who are trying to work every single day and save. That's like not a competition. That is not something that you can even compete against. So now you're looking at cars being very expensive and only have the ability to finance. And so everybody ends up financing. So in order to buy a car, you have to have access to financing. This is access to new money. And every time you bring in new money, you are going to separate the rich from the poor, because new money is going to the most industrious people out there, who then will be the ones who have. And then people who aren't the most industrious will have not. So every time, there we go, that you see somebody out there saying, man, they should just help out the poor people, they should just, every time you hear that, is basically saying the government should spend money on, right? They should just. And if they should just do that and spend money on a particular thing that is really awesome for a particular group of people, and you can say, hey, look how awesome this is. And you'd be like, yeah, that is pretty awesome. I mean, that you're able to provide some of these things for the have-nots that are out there. But the unfortunate part about this is that it was an entering of new money into the system, because what you had done was just have government do it, which is just having them spend new money, which is borrowing money, and doing this particular thing that looks really great in the visual, good-hearted feeling of trying to provide something for the people who don't have anything. But that was the entering of new money. And when you enter new money into the system, you will have a separation between the rich and the poor. So this whole thing of even trying to help the people themselves and like, hey man, you should do this, and this would be very beneficial to the people. And the government goes out there and says, okay, this is what the people are asking for. Let's take all this, time, effort, energy that you have done, tax you for it. We're going to take and borrow the money, and we're going to do this thing and help these people out. And then what happens is that all the separation of the rich and the poor continue on because it was entering of new money. The people will beg for it. People will beg for this to happen every single time. Like I was listening to it just recently, where, the talking of being in Portland was, a terrible event with all these homeless people everywhere and businesses shutting down. And, I hear they should just clean this up, and I'm like, they should just. I thought that was one, in fact, that should have been the title of the video, not people beg for it. They should just, right? The government, they should just do whatever it is that people think that is best for them, right? But hardly ever do people ever think about what it is that they should do that's best for themselves. Like I had a comment in one of the videos that I had done recently saying, "Oh yeah, that's real nice, man. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's great advice for whatever." And I'm thinking, what, you expect to change the external? You think the government's going to change? You think anything out there is going to change to meet the situation in which that you believe is going to be most fitting for you? I mean, that ain't going to happen, right? So, I mean, since that's not going to happen, you might as well figure it out for yourselves. And I think that's what we're doing here. And by understanding that every time the government steps in to spend new money into the system, you will have a separation between the rich and the poor. See, there's no other way that money can flow except for in that direction until it turns off, until new money stops flowing in. Then you'll have a redistribution of wealth. But as long as new money flows in, you will always have a concentration and a separation. It can't really go any other way. I mean, Cantillon describes it very well hundreds of years ago. People will say, like, this is the reason why, they'll blame politics and corporate greed and, all kinds of, like, very good. And I shouldn't, like, argue against it, but it's really good arguments about why, like, manufacturing was leaving the United States and stuff like that. But ultimately, it comes down to is a higher standard of living that we have in this country, that we can no longer compete against people out there in the world who have a lesser standard of living who are making the same products. It's just, Cantillon describes it like literally hundreds of years ago. So when people are like, dude, you're so wrong on this, it was totally the government, it was totally this energy, being cut off from Russia, it was totally all this other stuff. And I'm thinking that is exactly the Cantillon effect. The moment that you no longer have the ability to access cheap something, right? Cheap shipping, cheap energy, cheap labor, cheap whatever. If you can no longer manufacture your thing for a cheaper price than that person over there, you're done. That's it. Like even if you can manufacture it, even if you were manufacturing it more expensive and you can distribute it cheaper than them at a price that is then more efficient, then you can still manufacture at a higher price so long as you have the distribution channels. But the moment you lose the distribution channel, right? As soon as you lose partnerships, then that's it, right? Now you can't compete on that level because you no longer have the efficient shipping channels. And so understanding it from all these different angles will then give you a better perspective on what it is that you need to do for your life, because people begged for this. People are going to beg to be poor. Going into the future, they're going to say the government should just. And every time you hear that, you know that it's going to be like this wedge being driven. Bam! Because the government just needs to do this. Bam! Right? Another wedge, another smash to the wedge. And so the more I think about this stuff, the more I dive into it, the more I realize, okay, how is it that I position myself? Because when you think about it, when you're young, it's going to be pretty easy to get on one side of the wedge or the other. And like you can screw off, not do anything, party it all away, drink travel, do whatever, and you'll be on the bottom side of the wedge because you didn't save anything, you didn't do anything, and by the time you're 40 years old, you're going to try and figure out, man, why is it so hard? Why is buying a car hard? Why is it getting an apartment hard? Why is it, trying to make connections all hard? It's because you literally positioned yourself on the bottom side of the wedge, right? The entire time when you were surfing and partying and chasing girls and doing whatever, this is where you've positioned yourself to be. So positioning yourself on the other side of the wedge early on in life is pretty easy to do. And even if you really don't know what you're doing, like you just don't know, like you're like, man, I work at McDonald's and I have no idea what it is, man. I have no connections, no people out there. No matter what, there's got to be a place or position or something that you can do to save some money. And when you do start saving money, you can always start putting it into things that are going to eventually be very rewarding to you far out into the future. $50 a month, all right? How hard is that? $50 a month when you're very young, compounded interest going into 50, 60 years into your life. You will find at the end of your life, you will have a lot of money. Now, granted, it's a long-term, dedicated, being very committed, very disciplined, right? And you have to go through with it. And the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. And you will find that positioning yourself on the other side of the wedge early on in life, doing something just like that, wasn't a big deal, right? It was actually something that would probably have been fairly easy to do. But the more that you wait or the more you party, the more likely you're going to have to work that much harder to get onto the other side of the wedge in order to have that decent life. And you got to understand, this is not something that's going to change. This is like, the gap between the rich and the poor, the inequality is only going to get worse. In fact, it can only get worse. It just can't go any other way. And so as the new money continues to pour in and we find that people are positioning themselves on the other side of the wedge, these younger people who have access to things like, online brokerages as simple as using Cash App or Robinhood or something of that nature, are going to be able to start immediately putting themselves over there instead of having to compete against a bunch of people who are going out there, getting that career with a 401k, then start loading up that 401k. All these people who are taking that sort of path, which is kind of like an old school path, which is like, don't get me wrong, it's a great way to go. If they are waiting to take that, like it's just like, I got to work 20, like from the time I'm 20 to 25 before I can really get into a position in which that I can start saving in a 401k manner, right? If this is kind of like the mentality, they are literally going to be competing against people who are starting when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, right? And so they're going to find at 25, when these people who are 16, 17, 18, who are 25 years old, who have been already loading themselves up with stocks and positions and whatever it is that they feel is like the appropriate business, they're going to be competing against these other people who are taking this old school mentality. Right? And then even worse, there's going to be people down there who didn't do anything at all, and that's going to be like a lot of people. And so the more this happens, the more this wedge is going to be driven between the rich and the poor, because there's the people who do it and the people who don't, right? The people who don't have nothing, right? You think about it, if you have nothing, then there's like, that's it, man. There's nothing, like, that's it. And then you got people who have an extreme amount because there's so much to have, right? Because they've printed so much of it and it can only flow in one direction so long as it continues to flow in. Again, once it stops flowing in, once the new money turns off, then the redistribution starts to happen. But what that looks like would be a terrible event here in the United States. And as people are begging for, some sort of lessening in this inequality, what they are really begging for is a dramatic, miserable, poverty-stricken event that is going to create that inequality or to create the lessening of inequality that they're looking for. But that's not something that they should be asking for. And to understand that, the way the system has evolved into what it is today is not something that's going to be easily reversed. It is something that you can deal with, but it's not something that you can reverse. Let's go check out this super chat here. All right. Breck Lemons, $10. Thank you so much. New viewer recently. Addicted, and I love with your in love with your channel, you. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, we break it down here. We try to really figure it out for the best ourselves so that we can position ourselves and to understand that this isn't a game here, right? This isn't something that people are like, oh man, you win, you lose, or whatever. It's just like if you lose bad. Like, winning at this game is absolutely critical. Like you cannot lose. There's like losing is not an option. And so to understand that we are positioning ourselves every single day with every single choice that we make and how it is we make these choices. See, like it really comes down to the more I do this channel, the more I talk about this stuff, the more I realize, man, there is a much higher power that's at work here. There's universal powers, people can call it God, whatever, right? So there is something that's much bigger here that's happening. And when I say that, it was pretty interesting. Yesterday, and let me tell you a story real quick, because you guys heard me talk about excellence and chasing pleasure. So yesterday, I went out to hang out, just, go and have chicken strips and, hang out at the bar and, have conversation. No big deal. And the night was getting kind of on, and I really should have gone home. Right. But instead, was invited to go to another place. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have to work this week, at all. I'm like on vacation. So vacation time, right? Let's go do it. Let's go hang out at this other place. So we go up to this other bar, and the group that I was kind of with was just like, they just disappeared, right? I don't know where the hell they went. And I'm like, man, why the hell did I drive all the way up here if we're not going to sit around and have conversation or something like that? I'm not drinking, right? I'm just like, I'm hanging out with these guys, and they just kind of all just disappeared into the bar, right? So I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I should just go home. Well, this other group recognized the channel, like recognized me. They're like, hey, dude, Simon, man, I love your channel. I'm like, oh, all right, cool, man. So I go and I meet them. Well, it turns out they actually have a business very much in line with what it is that I do. And they were like, hey, we would love to sit and chat with you, man. We love your channel. We love what you do, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out that they ended up like kind of offering me some job. They're like, hey, you should come up and talk to us and see what we can do about, you come working for us. And I thought, holy crap, I almost landed in this job interview thing, just bullshitting with these guys. They were really impressed with everything that I've done. And I thought, man, this is cool. This is like, a moment of me actually pursuing excellence, not even trying. Like I didn't even mean to do it. And it was a great conversation. We talked about economics. I talked about credible threat theory. We did all kinds of stuff, talked about lumber because that's really what, the business that we were into. And so I thought about, like, I went up there in the idea of chasing pleasure, essentially, right? Hanging out of the bar, just screwing off, not doing anything, and had that like pleasurable experience, like not really turn out to be like, the what I thought it was going to be, which was kind of like, a pain in the ass. It was like I drove all the way up here for no reason. But then really what ended up being from that was this moment that I got to hang out with these guys and really have a great connection and talk about like some of like the awesome things that we have done together. And it's just like, or in our lives, yet it was just like, man, this was the reason why I came up here, was so that I can talk with these guys. It was just like the whole thing lined up for this moment. I spent 2 hours, having this conversation with these people, and it was an actual really great event, right? And it was, again, it was just like more of like the excellent side of things. And so I thought, man, that's how this works. This is how universal powers end up working. Is that I went up there and kind of was pissed off about it at first, but then realized, no, man, look how awesome this ended up being. All right, man. So we got a bunch of people up here, 268. Let's keep going, man. We got Lumberjack Landlord up in here. It's great to see you, brother. I see you're talking with somebody there. Let's see. Luckiest man in the world can be the unluckiest by not looking on the ground where the money is he is stepping on. Yeah, it can really be like, yep, right there in front of you the entire time. The main part is investing correctly. It is. And, it's a matter of like, you got to understand, it's not like this game. I don't know what you guys were talking about there, but like, when it comes to like this whole idea of you got to get on the other side of the wedge, it really comes down to not just investing correctly, but to know that you have to do it. Like if you didn't realize that if you don't do this, that you're going to end up poor and broke and desperate and trying to get the government to do something about it, and every time they do, it gets worse, then it's like, man, you're going to wish that you had done something early. Like, because I thought about it. It's just like, it's not easy for people who are getting older. Like, I have a buddy who's in his 60s, and he is like, you can tell he is scared. He has nothing. He has nothing in a savings account. He has no house, no assets. He has his car just recently broke down, so he had to get a car, and now he makes car payments, right? And so I'm like, bro, this is not good, man. Like, this isn't good. And instead of like, trying to figure out something to do, he goes and like sits at the bar, you know? And so I just think about that. It was just like, man, this is people who are just going to work until the day they die because they really don't know what else they can do. There's like nothing they can do. And even now, if you were to ask a man, if you were to go back and change things, he would say yes, right? Because he doesn't want to have this position. But even still today, I don't think he would know exactly what it is that he would change. Like, he would say, oh, I would put money and invest money. But how would you do that, right? Like, because things aren't the same today as they were way back when, when he was 18. And you got people who are 18 today who can invest easily, right? No problem. And so it's because of the mindset that he was in from the very beginning that really got him into the position that he was in. And that's really where I think like most people end up suffering the consequences, because it's literally the mindset that they're in. Most of the time people live in a scarcity mindset where things are very difficult and hard to get. And when you live in that, it's almost as if you are going to create a situation in which that things are difficult and hard to get. And then you prove it to yourself. You're like, look, see, things are difficult and hard to get. Not knowing that this world is full of abundance and it's really easy to get things, and it's really easy to live a life of plenty out there, just knowing that it actually exists and that you have to work and do things in a manner that will provide you with the ability to acquire those things. See, like, it's not exactly easy to do it. I shouldn't say that, right? It's not easy, but it's easily there. It's all there. Like, money flies everywhere. You just got to learn how to reach out and grab it. And so when I see people who are having a very difficult time in life, and I think about what it is that they're doing, and most of the time they are usually in a position in which this is the reasons why it's very difficult, and they explain it. No, listen, they say, man, you don't know my circumstances. Listen, these people did this, these people that, then this happened to me, and blah, blah, and they go, and I'm like, man, yeah, right, those things do impact you in a huge manner, right? Every single one of those things are massive. Now, what is it you're going to do about these things, right? Because you've taken it in. You got the information now. It's just like these, boom, 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 all this stuff happened to me. Right? So those are great excuses. They're reasonable, and yes, they're right. Now, what is it that you're going to do? Right? Because you can say, hey, I need these things to change. Well, some of those things aren't going to change. Right? Some of them you might be able to change. You might get somebody to change their behavior or something like that, or you might be able to change your location. There's some things that you're going to be able to change, but then there's some things you're not going to be able to change. So what are you going to do about those things, right? Are you going to continue to give it meaning that says, hey, man, these things deteriorate my life. They this is the reason why my life sucks or whatever. And you're going to continue to give it that meaning and say, this is why it's happening. Right? So as you give it this meaning that says, this is the reason why it's happening, and you blame it on this external, what you are not going to do is figure out what it is that you need to do in order to deal with that. Right? Because you're just going to continue to blame that. You just eventually have to say, I understand these things happen to me, but now what is it that I do about it? Right? Yeah, the government sucks. Right? I don't like what they're doing. They do all this crap that screwed my entire farm up. My farm is falling apart. They're taxing the shit out of me. They're doing all this other stuff, right? Okay, got that part, right? It's happening. It's happening to you, and it's happening to a bunch of other people out there, and it's really destroying this way of the system that you have grown to accustom to know, right? You're not adapting. And I understand that, like, you have gone, like, hey, man, I've worked hard to have it this way, right? I need it this way. And I like it like that. Like, believe me, man, I am one of the biggest people in the entire world who says, no, it has to be this particular way. Like, I am huge into that, right? But that's very egotistical. And you can't live life like that because you have to be able to adapt to the situation. And by adapting to the situation, you have to look at things and say, yeah, they changed. Yeah, they're doing things differently now, and I cannot operate in the way that I did like 100 years ago. My 150-year family farm, whatever generations back, is now in question of being able to continue on in operation, and it's because of these people over here. Yes, this is evolution. This is how it works, right? And it sucks for you, and I get that part, right? But it's also to understand that you have to see it coming. You have to understand why it's taking place. You have to know that things are not ever going to stay the same and that it's constantly changing and constantly figuring out how you're going to adapt to it. Just very much like the kids who can now buy into Cash App in order to get their stock position, and they're going to, like, you got somebody else who has a mentality, says, how did my great grandfather do this, how did my grandfather do it, how did my father do it? And it's just like, no man, you go and you get this degree and you work for this company, and after you're, work for the company for a while, you're going to start loading up on a 401k. Meanwhile, some kid out there is, side hustling stuff online and loading up on, crypto stocks or something of that, I don't know what, and he is just absolutely killing it because he has access to all this technology and he's not taking this old school mentality, which did work. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, that idea does, I mean, it's not like it's a wrong idea, it works, right? But when you have new technologies, new ideas, new systems, and evolution to it, now these people, once they get their retirement, they will have been competing against somebody who was sitting down in their basement playing video games, selling stuff online, and just absolutely killing it, in the stock market because of the positions that they take in their day trading as side hustle or whatever they're doing. And this is the world that we compete in, like, on a daily basis. I think about people who try to struggle in an apartment. They're like, man, even making a good job is very difficult, 9 to 5 job, in order to buy an apartment here where I live in Astoria. It's the 10th most expensive place per capita in the country to live. All right, 10 to 50,000 people, 10th most expensive place to live. And so when I think about that here in Astoria, and people are like, man, it's very difficult to have a 9 to 5 job and try and find an apartment and, that's decent enough to live in and not be full of mold and, nasty because you're living in a basement or something of that nature. And I think to myself, yeah, it's because you got a 9 to 5 job, right? But the person who has the apartment up there has a 9 to 5 job and they're doing side hustles and they got other things going on, because that's the life that we live nowadays. Is that it's not just a matter of working a 9 to 5 job. It's a matter of working almost constantly. And it's like almost like to the point that, in fact, people get mad about that. They're saying, yeah, what a great existence to live in an idea of working all the time. Yeah, that's wonderful, bro. Like, this isn't my idea, right? This isn't like I'm trying to say, hey, man, this is a wonderful idea that we need to experience in our world. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm saying is this is the way it is, right? This is what it's going down like. People have access to this. So if you want access to it too, you're going to have to do what these other people are doing, which is working a 9 to 5 job, and they're doing side hustles out there online or taking another second job or doing all kinds of stuff in order to make ends meet. And if you're not doing that, then you're not going to be able to compete against them. Just very much like the manufacturing of this country can't compete with somebody out there who has a lesser standard of living. This is it. It's almost the same. Earn more money, you have a more income, more new money that comes in from your 9 to 5 job, your side hustle and everything. You get to enjoy the luxury of having an apartment. The person out there who's working 9 to 5 can't compete. Let's go check this one out. I think I got one from, I did. Thank you very much, Matthew, for the $20, man. Cash flowing assets, net worth is chasing the wrong thing. You can save your way to real wealth. People that leverage assets that create cash always end up on the top of the mountain. Love you, UE. Looking forward to Vegas. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Vegas too. We're going there in February. It's going to be a great event for Mike Zuber's One Rental at a Time conference. And I totally agree. Cash flowing assets, that's really where it's at. I mean, if you think about, like, assets are one of two ways that you can go. You can either go into speculation or you can go into, like, actual investing. Investments are things that pay you. rental income, dividend paying stocks, a business, something of that nature, like something that is going to continue to have cash flow coming from it. Like you put your money here and then every month something's coming back to you. When you put money towards Bitcoin or you put money towards gold, then you're putting it towards a speculation, which is, it's okay for a savings in a sense, like, to be out of the third party claim and stuff like that, because I totally feel like appropriate positioning yourself in silver for that insurance against the third party claim is a very good idea. How much you put into there is up to you. Like, I'm not trying to give any kind of dollar amount or position amount, but they say like a safe way to go about it is like somewhere around 5 to 10%. I I know people who've done a hell of a lot more than that, and I have too, right? So it's just like but that's still like the idea that you're going to eventually be able to sell it off for a higher price to somebody, which is again, it's more of a speculation. So when you're into cash flowing assets like rental income, especially like rental income is like the simplest way to kind of think about it, because you buy a house, you put a tenant in the house, the tenant pays the mortgage, and you get a little bit of extra off of it, after you deal with the maintenance and taxes and whatever. And so understanding like having cash flowing assets, something similar to that of a rental income, then you start finding that people have figured out how to not only just go and work really, 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 really hard to eventually get to the down payment to buy this cash flowing asset, but then to figure out how they can work really hard for a while in order to leverage the ability to acquire the cash to buy the cash flowing asset. And so pretty soon you realize that there's people out there who work really, really, really hard to try and get one of these cash flowing assets. And then there's people who work really hard to acquire the cash to get the cash flowing assets. And so borrowing money to buy cash flowing assets essentially is what it comes down to. And so when you think about how new money comes into the system in this fashion, so you're going to work really, really hard, to acquire a cash flowing asset, but you working really hard down at McDonald's to acquire a cash flowing asset is competing against people who are borrowing money to buy a cash flowing asset. You see? So this is now the direction. It's like you can try and fight the system and say, hey, man, this isn't appropriate. We shouldn't be able to do it this way. I don't like it. But you have to understand that if you want one of these positions and you're going to work really, really hard, you are competing against people who are borrowing money to get into that same position, which means that they don't have to work as incredibly hard as you do, because they've leveraged the work that they are doing in order to acquire the cash to buy that cash flowing asset. It's kind of like buying the car, right? If you want to work really, really hard and buy a brand new car, think about how hard and long you have to work, right? Because you're competing against people out there who are borrowing money to buy a car. And since all these people are borrowing money to buy a car, the price of the car is going to be incredibly elevated. They wouldn't be building expensive cars, as expensive as they are anyway, if people had to work hard and save the money to buy it. But because all these people are going to buy it with financing, the people who have first access to the money are people who are making payments on that money, and financing a vehicle can then be you can start selling them very expensive items. And so now the people who are out there going, man, I want to work hard, acquire the money to buy a car, it's very difficult for them because they have to compete against people who are borrowing money to buy the cars. Same thing with the cash flowing assets. And this is another reason why you find such separation between the rich and the poor. Just know that you can do it too, right? You can do it too. It's hard, right? It's hard to figure it out. You got to, spend time doing it. It's building it brick by brick, right? Piece by piece, figuring out how it is that you're going to get in there and make it happen. But that's, ultimately what you're going to compete against. And if you like it or not, it doesn't matter. So it's like, it's not a matter of whether you should like it or not want to do it that way, or it shouldn't be done that way or whatever. Well, people are doing it. And, you got to get in there and do it, or, quit bitching about it. Got to get a good deal on the front end. Appreciation is just icing on the cake, but may not be all that much. Just buy Bitcoin and chill, people. Young people don't have the time to become landlords. Buy a house with a friend. Yeah. Bitcoin and chill. What am I supposed to do in the meantime? Buck 52,000. I was in talk to buy a trailer park. See, now that would be a good one. I think a trailer park would be an excellent one because you can have like, rent's fairly inexpensive. So like if it's in a trailer park, then well, most of the time in trailer parks are fairly inexpensive. So that it's going to be like a fairly consistent payment, hopefully. But generally, like speaking, trailer parks are like I mean, it depends on which one you're in. But generally speaking, like trailer parks are like low income or lower income in the neighborhoods of like houses and stuff like that that's out there. So if you think like trailer parks could probably be fairly easily like filled as far as like if somebody has moved out or it's vacant or something like that, I would assume that a trailer would be something that would be easily occupied, especially in this day and age. I mean, at least in my area, it'd be that way. All right. Rod with the $5. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, but couldn't print money until 1971. What are you talking about? That's not true. So what was the function back then? What are you talking about? They couldn't print money until 1971. I have Federal Reserve notes from 1958 on my desk in there. No, that's not true. The Federal Reserve notes have been in circulation for quite some time. And I mean, I couldn't tell you when the exact first one came out. I don't know if it was 1913, because, I mean, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you when the first ones were out there in circulation or if they were just sitting as, the idea of reserves or whatever was out there. But there was definitely, prior to 1971, there was Federal Reserve notes out there. So, yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Yeah. That's how people in the top that don't belong there get there. That's how the people who at the top who don't belong there get there. What do you mean they don't belong there? If they figured out how to get there, then they belong there. That's not true, man. If you figured out how to get there, you belong there. I don't care how you figured out how you got there, right? Like they lie, cheat, and steal. It was just like they're in a system of lie, cheat, and stealing. Like this. I don't get that, I think like a lot of times people, I don't look at this whole system and what we have going on as something that was designed and deployed, right? I think it's evolved. It's evolved into this. And you can take on a position that's outside of it. You know that, right? Like, I mean, you can position yourself without possessions of property, right? So you don't have to have government interference with taxing you and stuff like that. So you can get out of that position. You can get out of the banking system by holding gold and now more conveniently Bitcoin. There's lots of ways that you can position yourself so you don't have to deal with a lot of the impacts of governmental control and stuff like that over you. But it's very difficult to operate in that. But you can do it. Like there's nothing stopping you. And some people do that. Like, I mean, that's their thing. That's how they operate. And so when I hear people like, "Oh man, we need a different system," I was just like, "What different system? Go live it. Go live the system you want to live." You want other people to live a different system, is what you're asking. I mean, if you want it to change, you want something out there to change. All right, I bought 9K in gold and silver coins in 2020, now worth 16K. Call it God, but I think that they've been there since Jesus this time. The people at the top have never changed throughout the ages. 1849 first gold coin was minted. I'm on the kayak, living the dream. Right on, all-nighter. All right, we got Cody up in here. It's good to see you, bud. I'm going to buy more silver soon. Well, good for you, man. MicroStrategy just doubled down on BTC and put $2 billion into it. The power of compounding interest. Absolutely. The power of compounding interest, like that, It's something that I heard when I was a kid, and like you knew back then you should have done something about it, but you didn't. Like I look back and I'm like, man, how easy it would have been if I was a young man, just like, with that first job. I remember like one of my first jobs was knitting crab pots, commercial crab pots, going out to the Pacific here outside of, off the Columbia River, fishing for Dungeness crab, right? And so I worked for a company that would build the crab pots that these commercial fishermen would use. And I remember like that was just like awesome money for me because at 16, 17 years old having this money, and then I started going to work for the lumberyard too. But I remember that was just like, so awesome for me because it was good money during the season that you could go and make pretty quick. And I didn't do anything with that money but throw it away, right? I mean, just partied it up, never had it, never saved any of it. And I look back, man, had I put some of that money towards things that like, I talk about now, if I could have figured out a way to do that, right? Because at the time we didn't have access to, something as simple as Robinhood or Cash App or something of that nature. Not quite too big to fail, but getting there. I have a 2016 Toyota Corolla I got for $12,000 in 2017 with 40K, and I still drive it. Good for you, man. Become the quality beneficial owner. Give up all your property. Get the state to be your securities intermediary. When the sailor buys, that means means time to short BTC. XRP will bring all money, new opportunity. I I don't get it, man. Like I don't understand. I don't understand. Because to me, it's not a matter of transaction speed or ability, right? That's not what it comes down to. When I think about currencies and what it is doing, it really comes down to the availability of the currency due to the trust that people have for it. Now, granted, people do not trust the dollar like they once did. There's all kinds of people out there talking about how there's de-dollarization and abandoning the dollar and all this other stuff that's happening. But to understand that the dollar itself has no replacement, right? It's not replaceable. It has to be failed, right? It has to fail, or be in a state of failure, is how I should say it, in order for something else to replace it. Until then, it's going to have to share a symbiotic relationship, meaning that it'll trade one to one. Like people will look at it and say, I am not looking at anything different than when I'm looking at this. When they look at a stable coin, thinking they're trading a dollar and they don't know that they're trading a stable coin, or they don't know that they're trading a dollar, when they have that sort of consideration over it, then you can find a replacement for the dollar. And I believe that there is a way that they can make this happen through stablecoin issuance, being backed by dollars, and then replace what's backing the dollar. And I think this could actually take place, and then you would have a new currency out there, and people wouldn't even realize that it had changed. But to even if you were to introduce a faster payment systems or introduce a better system like Bitcoin or something like that, the economic forces that are underlying will always be at play. And so to understand that introducing something like a gold currency or a Bitcoin currency that has a limitation to it on how much is actually existing out there, it doesn't come down to transaction speed. It's a deflationary currency, and the most industrious people out there are going to hoard it for themselves. If they are hoarding it for themselves, then they are going to deny the rest of the people out there the ability to do transactions because there's not going to be any money because they have it all hoarded away. And this is the exact experience that was going through the economies leading all the way up into the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. They were the booms and bust cycles that the Federal Reserve Bank was introduced to try and smooth out. They said, hey, we have an elastic money supply now that we can now offer up currency during the hot economic times so that we do not have this bust cycle after the concentration of wealth is beginning. And when the economy slows down, we'll pull the money back out. This will be the elastic money supply, and it'll smooth out the business cycles. Created debt cycles, and all that money introduction still concentrated the wealth. And then they're like, oh man, well, can't really pull it back out if it's all concentrated. We got to add some more. And they just kept adding more, and it kept concentrating up to a handful of people. And this is the situation we are facing, in which that the addition of new money is almost a guarantee, or else we will have a collapse. And so if you have introduction of money, you'll have ever increasing amounts of inequality. And if you don't, you'll have a total collapse. So it's just like, which one do you want? They can't fix it. They can't fix the system. Our only saving grace is that every other economy is even worse. A dubious honor, yeah. Regulate it and take overnight with a crypto reclamation act like they did with gold in 1932. It won't. It's still, you're going to have the economic forces that are at play that are going to create the issues that are that of separating the rich and the poor through business cycles. And if you have something as limitation of Bitcoin or gold, and you are on a world standard Bitcoin, or what am I trying to say? A world reserve, or gold as a world reserve, or Bitcoin as a world reserve, if you're on that sort of standard and you are not the manufacturing powerhouse, and instead you are an importer to maintain your standard of living, what you are going to do is you are going to import stuff, you're going to export all your money, and you are going to fall into pain and misery and poverty. Don't wish for it. And don't ask for it. I don't care what you do. That's fine. I have Bitcoin, I have gold, and if I am really smart about it, I might be able to really, really do well in that sort of situation. But I got to really pay attention to what I'm doing. And I think about these things all the time. So I think, okay, well, if that does take place, which I don't believe it will, but if it did, I feel like I at least have thought about it enough that I could probably position myself fairly well. I don't have to be the fastest person in the camp. I just have to be faster than most people out there. And I think that, even having considered it and having it in possession is probably more than 99% of the people do, right? Moving on. Let's get down to the bottom here. I admire the diverse opinions in this chat. Me too, man. Ordinary Bitcoin, I do too. And I have always said it, man. This is like probably one of the best channels that you could ever get to as far as trying to understand economics, and especially when it comes to the comment section. It's pure gold. And that's a good spot for me to actually throw out there the members only live streams. We're going to do a bunch of them next week as we cover a bunch of the recent Federal Reserve speeches. I have the next week off. So I'm probably going to be doing daily member only live streams. If you don't have, if you can't be there for the live stream itself, no worries. It'll be up there for the members only to go and back and review and watch anytime you want. But these are going to be great, great live streams talking about the recent Fed speeches, getting the insight of what it is that we can, get an idea of what it is that we can see coming into the future, especially considering that nobody knows what they're going to do after the December rate cut, because we all know that they're going to be doing some sort of rate cut here in the near future. But after that, it's going to be very questionable on whether or not we have the inflation ramping back up and forcing them to have to raise rate again, like Daly said just recently. But we'll find out. Anyway, we're on this chat today, not that chat. This guy is just trying to make some money. Well, 9/11, COVID, inside jobs. Why not? What's the problem? I don't understand. I come out here, I share this information with everybody all day long so that they can have a better insight into what it is that they need to do with their lives. I share stuff that nobody else is talking about. To me, it's not only benefiting me and my understanding of how it is that I do this, but then I also get rewarded for it in a way that I feel is, something that is almost given to me in the way of, man, if you share excellence, if you share your knowledge, if you share something that is useful, then you will be rewarded for it naturally. I don't ask for a whole lot out there, right? I mean, I could be doing sponsorships. I could be doing stuff that YouTubers out there really would do with 150,000 subscribers to make some serious money. There's people out there who make more in a week than I'll make in a year on this channel. And believe me, I've reached out there and I've tried some of that stuff, and I tell you, man, it's good money, right? But it don't make me feel very good. So I like doing this, and I like what I share, and I think getting a little bit of money off of it is not a big deal, right? I mean, you know, all I ask you to do is watch it and hit the like button. There's actually a way to balance the manufacturing disparity, remove the subsidies from Chinese shipping from the World Trade Organization and BIS, drop the corporate tax rate, and it should get competitive. Okay, David, I don't disagree that a lot of those things would have an impact, but it doesn't take away from the fact that Cantillon was describing how it is that manufacturing will leave the state hundreds of years ago, right? It's due to the fact that you raise your standard of living and you're no longer able to compete. Now, whether or not there is a moment there that you have a higher standard of living and you are producing same thing that somebody else is producing and you're able to distribute it out there to the world in a way that is efficient enough that then gives you the ability to continue to profit. And I'm not saying those conditions don't exist. What I am saying is that when you see manufacturing state leaving the state, moving out there to cheaper places to produce, that is exactly how Cantillon described it. They were good at it. By being good at it, they sold that stuff out there to the world. The new money came in. New money raises the standard of living. The standard of living means that you are no longer competitive, and somebody else out there at first may not make it as good as you, but they are going to stop buying it from you, right? You may not be selling it like to them anymore. You might be selling it out there to the world, but they're going to stop buying it from you. And so there you lost customer already. And as other people start to realize that they can make it for themselves, they do. And so you may not even have to compete against the manufacturing that is like other distributors out there. They're just simply manufacturing it for themselves now, and you're out the game. And this happens all the time. I mean, it's like, it's better to understand it in this fashion. That way you know, like, where it is that you stand. Why is it that I'm losing my good car manufacturing job right now? This doesn't make it. It's their fault. They should just, right? Like the beginning of the video, they should just what? Right? You should, I mean, if we didn't have a higher standard of living, then you'd just be having a job, you know? I mean, that's all there is to it. And I'm not trying to be like annoying in the sense that, you know, hey, it's your fault for having a higher standard of living. What I'm saying is this is the natural consequence of things. It's just the natural progression. It's not even a consequence. It's just the way it is. It's the reality. Hard to find good info like this. Thanks for sharing. Also, all-nighter, Black COVID inside job. Why is he being if he's being it? I mean, to be honest with you, man, all-nighter, I trust you, bro. If you want to, you know, if you need to block somebody, just go do what you need to do. All right. Many things requires different levels of pay structures to manufacturing, like iPhone and associated parts. Oops, excuse me. Cheers. Most rich people look poor on purpose. They have nothing to prove. Only poor people do that. You don't have some. Okay, not a billionaire or not all billionaires are genius. Yeah. Bill Gates has a $2 haircut. Never heard you talk about tokenization of stocks. Companies like T0, which has coveted SPBD license, will be releasing tokenized services in the first quarter of next year. What do you think? I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know what I'm like. What is that gonna do? I mean, is it other than making it easier to do transactions and stuff like that? Like, I mean, or as far as like, I mean, I see things being tokenized. Dollars getting tokenized, commodities getting tokenized. I could even see where like each and every single stick of lumber could have its own QR code and be tokenized on its own. Like you could tell like exactly where that 2x4 came from, what truck it traveled on, what tree it was milled from, what forest it came out of. You can tell what house it went to. Yeah, if you do it right. And so I believe that tokenizing of everything is eventually going to be a thing. Right? If you were on the better side of the wedge like a prince, what would you do to ensure your children and children's children stay on the upside of the wedge? Tank the finances so they see hard times? I don't know. I mean, I guess I would like to think that, by teaching them everything that I understand, like Freddie understands, like teaching my kid as much as I can. Like he understands a lot about economics. He understands a lot about how good debt and bad debt works, and he understands a lot about like even money, like the Gresham's law, like why the copper pennies are worth more than the zinc pennies. He sees these things and he digs them out and he starts researching them. That sort of mindset just leads you down a path in which that you don't end up like punishing yourself later in the future by some of the bad decisions that you have made. You're making good decisions based on the idea that, man, these things have changed for a reason. The money system is in this way, looks this way for a reason. And if people want to put excuses and blame out there, which there's plenty to go around, then you end up putting yourself in a position in which that you think that there can be some sort of change to make it better. Like there's going to be a better way out there. So the better way is to understand it for yourself. And this is the way that you do it. You start from the simple of just sorting out pennies or the silver change, or learning how to invest simply, like I said, with Robinhood or Cash App, and just buying those stocks individually. All right. Teach your children well. Yeah, absolutely. All right. I am just here because I like UE. Don't need your BS. Huh. You guys are all mad. All right. XRP won't replace the dollar. Platforms like XRP, XLM, Algo, and others will be how currencies flow due to tokenization. Most won't know they are using them. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Even a Coke was 50 cents for a long time. Uneducated Economist branded silver bars for sale. When? Oh, hey, that's a good idea, Katie. I like it. It was funny. Like, I thought about, like, this time I did ask somebody about coins. I'm like, hey, man, how do I get this coin? The guy actually was arrested by the FBI. So it was funny it was like the one and only time I actually texted somebody about it. It was like I felt like I texted right to the FBI. All right, great thing was you don't have to do much as a kid to get a treat like ice cream, candy, bar, or pop. All right. Rick and assets. Lumberjack landlord to Katie, that would be awesome. Yeah, it would be pretty cool. I should look into that. In fact, I think I do know a different guy I could talk to. All right. It's only a matter of time before the system breaks under the strain of separation of the rich and poor. Well, yeah, and I think about that. Like, what would that strain look like? Because like you have to understand that it's just not a matter of strain. It's a matter of whether or not you're able to get new money in. And so, how do you get new money in this system is through debt issuance. So that would essentially mean that the bonds, right? The bonds would no longer be able to be sold, or they're defaulting of that nature. Like they're not being paid. And so that would be like how the money would be denied coming in. And so at that point, we would be facing some serious consequences from it. However, does that seem like it's going to happen? Like, I know for a lot of people, they think it's going to happen, but does it really seem like it's going to happen? I mean, Russia just recently bought U.S. Treasury debt. China is issuing out debt that's due in dollars. There's more foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury debt today than any time in history. So to me, it's like that not a high concern that they're not going to have the ability to inject new money. Like that's a very low concern. Like they won't, the money printer turning off or the ability to not use it is not a concern of mine. Right? I believe that they will have that ability to them. And if they have that ability, then they're going to be able to inject new money into the system. And if you can inject new money into the system, then you're going to have continual inequality. You're going to have continual separation between the rich and the poor, as those who understand getting access to that money and buying cash flowing assets with it and becoming property owners and capitalists are going to be very few and far between, and competing in those who are competing with a day job to try and acquire those same sort of assets as people are borrowing money to acquire those assets. Again, it's going to get very difficult to try and compete against that, but as long as the new money is continuing in, you're going to find that people are going to have jobs. So, in order to deal with the fact that you have this massive inequality, this is where I believe UBI is going to be injected, right? So they'll literally just hand us money to try and deal with the fact that the inequality is so bad, and these people with a 9-to-5 job have to compete against the people out there who are side hustling and doing all that other stuff, and they just simply can't do it. So they're going to start handing them money, and everybody's going to be singing like, hey man, this is awesome, look at us, we got all this money that we can go out there and spend on whatever we want. And then they're going to realize that it's going to essentially become ineffective as that new money starts to spread throughout the system, and that added consumption throws the supply-demand imbalances out, and you start finding inflationary pressures from it, which eats up all the purchasing power of the UBI, and then you'll have ever-increasing amounts of UBI coming in. And with this ever-increasing amounts of UBI, which is new money, you'll have ever-increasing amounts of separation from the rich and the poor. So by the time we get to UBI, it'll actually be causing the inequality to be on a rocket ship. And this is where you're going to probably find like massive taxing of the rich, right? They're going to try and tax the hell out of them to prevent this from taking place, but it won't work. I mean, it's, whether, I mean, you can try, and for some people, it's going to be an incredible nuisance, but just look at any time in history. Has that ever worked? Like, they got more taxes, more war, more taxes, more debt, more, separation between the rich and the poor. What time is it? I'm going to give it like another 10 minutes here, guys. We got 253 people watching, which is awesome. 126 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. $36 in super chats, because you guys are always so supportive of this channel. Someone said they knew where a loopholes were and would close them. He did not. There is no, like, that's kind of funny to say. An adapt in 90210 can be worth more. An apartment in Beverly Hills can be worth more than a 100-acre farm in Nebraska, just the way it is. Well, it is, because you think about the people who live in Beverly Hills and the amount of money that they have. Like the property owners, the people who are in that particular location have an insane amount of money, right? So they have, like, the area is going to meet the desires and the wants of the property owners that are there. And if the property owners who are there are very rich people, and then the people who are like living in that area are also rich capitalist property owners who own property in some other place, right? Because they own 100 houses spread out throughout America or whatever, and they happen to live in Beverly Hills too, right? This is where the property owners gathered. Then the place that they are gathered is going to be incredibly expensive, because they are all in competition with each other to buy a Starbucks. Yeah. Number one benefit of real estate is taxes and all the loopholes that exist. You can both lose and gain value on property at the same time. How? Reason. Lumberjack, it wasn't that insane. All right, lots of funny theories about gold being revalued and used as a world reserve behind a currency. What do you think about this? Possible, unlikely? No, I think it's very unlikely. In fact, I think it's like like to the point of impossible. Right? And you don't want the United States to be anywhere near or close to a gold standard. Like, you just simply do not want this to take place. And the reason is that we are not a manufacturing state like we once were. So if we have a gold standard, what's going to end up happening is that we are going to import stuff and export gold, and we are going to fall into pain and misery and poverty, as we do not manufacture enough to sustain our way of life. So the most beautiful thing in the world that people love to do is increase their standard of living. Nicer cars, nicer houses, nicer clothes, nicer food, nicer vacations. They like nicer stuff. The worst pain in the world is moving from the house to an apartment, going from the new Denali to a S10 pickup, going from, down to worn out clothes, not taking vacations, eating generic food, whatever. This is the pain that people have to experience when it comes to lessening their standard of living, and they hate that. But this is what's going to end up happening if you move to a gold standard and have a limited currency that's out there, and you're not a productive nation, but you're an importing nation who's working in a trade deficit. You are going to export all your money, and you will suffer the consequences from it. No, there is no returning to a gold standard in any form whatsoever. Right? Unless the dollar completely collapses, then okay, maybe we'll return to a gold standard at that point. But at that, we're talking some serious pain and misery that's going to be inflicted upon the people out there across the entire globe. You gotta think, dollars is the reason why people eat. It's what's providing the transactions that people need for trading their goods and services for other goods and services, and there's nothing else out there that is performing the task of the dollar to the level that the dollar is doing. There's nothing else out there. There's things out there that could do it. I could do it with the silver coin that I have in my pocket. I could do it with Bitcoin. We could do it with all kinds of stuff out there. Nothing comes close to the amount of transactions that the dollar is performing today. Even if you were to say, hey, we could do it with XRP. Well, you're right, we could. They don't. They do dollars. They don't do XRP. It's like some people do XRP. Some people do Bitcoin. Some people do gold. Some people do other currencies. The majority of the people across the globe do dollars because dollars is what's available to do it with. If you were to say, hey, we're going to remove all the dollars, there's nothing else out there. You can say, well, XRP, but it's not enough. It's not enough for the people out there to have positioned themselves to say, yes, we can use XRP to facilitate all the transactions in a single day. If we were to switch tomorrow and say, tomorrow we do this, nobody out there has XRP to do the transactions with. Everybody has dollars to do it with. It's a transition. You have to move into it. Right? And if XRP was trading one-to-one with dollars, then I would say, hey, man, that's a competing currency. I think that would work. Stable coins could work, because they're competing with dollars. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you will always be using dollars. You'd be like, hey, man, it seems like a dollar. It's a stable coin. It says it's backed by dollars. Yeah, and then after we all using stable coins, one day we find out that we're not using dollars. It's actually being backed by something else. But yet the whole time here, we thought we were using, trading in gold when we were trading in dollars. And then it was like, no, you weren't, but we thought we were. We thought we had, if we had a certain amount of dollars, we could get a fixed amount of gold. We actually believed that to be the case. And just like we would end up believing that stable coins could be dollars. And then one day we realized, nah, all those stable coins aren't transferred. You can't get your dollars from them. In fact, now you're going to get some basket of world currencies. It might be backed by SDRs or some other kind of cryptocurrencies or something, of that nature. Who knows? Right. Now, I honestly believe it's going to end up being backed by the debt of sovereign nations, as the Federal Reserve has already got the legal authority to buy the debt of a foreign nation, as opposed to U.S. Treasuries. And since they have said many times that the U.S. Treasury is on an unsustainable debt path, it would lead me to believe that they are looking for some sort of asset out there that they could buy, which is not U.S. Treasuries or mortgage-backed securities. And the vast, huge scope of opportunity to buy foreign debt is just unreal out there. I think that's probably a condition in which that they would go to. But how do you deal with the fact that you're going to buy the foreign debt, the debt of a foreign nation, and then produce U.S. Federal Reserve, U.S. dollars, Federal Reserve notes with it? It seems kind of odd. But if it's in a tokenized fashion, you may not even realize that's what's taking place. Yeah. Let's go check out the super chat from Dion, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Dion, talk finance freedom. $9.99. Looking forward to hearing you in Vegas. Right on, man. I appreciate you, Dion. I appreciate that $9.99. 99. 99. Very cool of you. And I'm looking forward to Vegas as well. I just come out here and I just spill it. I just let it all go, because and this is what's cool about it, is like I've gotten to the point I don't even need notes. I don't even look back. I mean, it's just like I've thought about so many different angles on things that it's like it's almost impossible for me to see it any other way now. And it's not saying that I can't take in other directions or other ideas of things. It's just that once you have like incorporated the economic theories, like especially those four economic theories of Gresham's law, Cantillon effect, the bullwhip effect, and Triffin's dilemma. You put all four of those together, you really study them, you understand them, why they exist, why they are, like essentially an economic force that's going on. You throw in the credible threat theory that I have developed, and it's like it's almost like you can't see it any other way. It's like this is the way the economy is going down. There's people who are like wanting to throw blame and all kinds of stuff. It's just like, well, yeah, there's a lot to blame, right? I mean, I can see why you would blame, but it's not the reason that's going down, right? Yeah, man, you were right the whole time. I appreciate it. I mean, I don't know if I was necessarily right on everything the whole time, but I knew some things weren't right that people were saying were right. And I'm like, nah, that's wrong. Like that part is wrong. And if that's wrong, there's got to be something else that is right. And so since I could call something out that was wrong because I knew that part wasn't right, it gave me the ability to go in search of what was right. Right? And as the people were like, well, it's this. And it's like, no, that's wrong. Right? Money printer go burr, prices go up. That's the reason why lumber was at 1,700 per thousand. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. And so many people said that it was right and that it was easy to see. And so as people were just had it in their head, they were so committed to the idea that the money printer was the reason why lumber prices were as high as they were. And I get to come out and say it straight up. Lumber prices will go back down to a normal price and nobody's going to have a reasoning for it except for me, right? Because I called it out at the high. And I was right about it. I mean, I couldn't believe how right I was about it. In fact, I went way out on a limb and I went, oh man, I can't believe I did that. What if I'm wrong? Like I started questioning myself and I'm like, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong about this. Like I'm absolutely right. I don't have to back out on my idea. This is definitely taking place and that everybody's going to have to figure out why it is that lumber went back down to its normal price and have no real reason for it. Oh, lumber just happens to be an anomaly. Well, they didn't call it an anomaly when it was at 1,700 per thousand and money printer go burr. They weren't calling it an anomaly then, right? They call it now. They're saying, well, yeah, it went back down to its normal price, but lumber is something completely different. And it's like it's not. It's not anything completely different. It was supply, demand, issues, right? Supply breakdown. I was even talking with those guys yesterday at the bar. This is like because they knew like that's how they caught wind of my channel. Right? It's because I was giving all those lumber predictions and stuff. And they saw it too. They were like, man, this guy's right on. He really sees it. And it's because of the location, right? It's because of the position that I had put myself in to see it. So many other people couldn't see it. They were just looking at numbers. They were pulling up numbers and charts and were like, look at all these greedy ass corporations doing all this, And I'm like, yeah, did you look up the charts of all the mills that shut down over the previous 5 years? The thousands upon thousands of mill operation jobs that have been, that literally vanished. I mean, did anybody want to talk about the greedy corporations taking profits while these people were losing all these positions, all these mills were shutting down, all these corporations are going bankrupt? I mean, anybody want to talk about that? No, of course not. All they want to talk about is greedy corporations at 1,700 per thousand, just raking it in, stealing from the people. And I'm like, man, people just don't get it. All right, you need to put your money on the poly market, bro. All right. Go ahead. You guys are all talking to 9/11. All right, Carl, what does he say? Yes, a home is a long game. Gotta have one, and being able to do what you like when you like is priceless, but there are always something to fix, maintain, etc., but generally worth it. There is always something to work on the house, always. Do you think people will lose their house because they can't pay taxes? Nah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people will, but I don't think that'll be a general thing. I don't think that'll be like, like individual people. I think might be a case, but all right. You can put money on the sort of stuff like the interest cuts of the Fed. Oh, Polymarket is the best. I enjoyed working on my house. I miss that. I mean, some people do. What is your go-to dividend stock? Mine? I've been buying Altria, but I think I'm going to get out of that. Well, not get out of it, but just not buy any more of it because I've taken quite a bit of a position inside of it. And really, I'm thinking like I'm going to wait for a crypto pullback if there is one, in the near future, and then start buying mainly into Coinbase. I think that's going to be like kind of a position I'm going to take on a lot of stuff. It's not a dividend-paying stock. But then the other one I was thinking was a real estate stock. What was it, Realty One or something like that? O, I think is the ticker symbol. I think that would be like the next dividend stock I'd be moving into if I was to. Lumberjack landlord, Lumberjack probably knows this better than I do, but it's my belief that right now is the best time to pay people's taxes to get a house. I don't know. I went into small caps and banking just a little. Different states have different tax laws. A few $100 with a real estate attorney can save zillions in headaches later. Aaron says, hello, UE. Have you ever considered looking at global liquidity as a metric? I found Michael Howell at Cross Border Capital to help a lot. His interviews on YouTube are pretty cool. I mean, I haven't looked like deeply into like, a lot of liquidity issues outside of things like dollar funding stresses in China. That was something that we had covered here on this channel in a members only live stream. It was a great Fed report talking about like when dollar liquidity issues start to happen in the global markets and the impact that it has on places like they were, specifically talking about China, but, places that have taken out a lot of dollar denominated debt, and what kind of impact it starts to have on a global markets when the dollar starts to strengthen up in this fashion, and then these nations aren't able to acquire the dollars that they need in order to pay those debts. It's quite fascinating to see how quickly it can ripple around the globe. Even I thought I am almost retired. I realized the other day that I might have 30 years left and I still need some long-termers. UE, thanks for giving me the incentive to save and be happy. Well, thank you, Deja Vu. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for all the support you've always shown the channel. Alrighty, guys. This was a lot of fun, but I'm going to call it quits. We got 213 people watching with 144 likes and $45.99 in super chats because you guys are so generous and so supportive of the channel. I really appreciate it. You know that I'm out here just about every single day trying to push out the information, my ideas, my theories, and the things that I've studied and come up with so that you can also incorporate it in with everything else that you're learning out there from all the other people who are sharing the nuggets of information that you need to pick up so that you can make the best decision for yourself. And this is the way I feel we do it, is by breaking it down with these conversations. I thank you very much for everything that you've done. Thank you for joining the channel. There's links down in the description to become a member of the channel. We're going to be doing some live streams here over this next week, probably, like one a day this whole week because I have vacation. So we'll be breaking those down into member-only live streams. It's $1 a month, right? Doesn't cost hardly anything, $12 a year, $120 a decade for good hardcore information that I put together. It's also coming into the Christmas time, so a lot of people do their Amazon purchases. If you go down into the link of the description of this video, you're going to find an Amazon affiliate link to the Cantillon essay. Cantillon essay is one that I constantly go back to. I really encourage everybody to read it, especially chapter 6, 7, and 8 on the increase and decrease of money to the state. You do not have to buy that essay off of Amazon. You can go and get it for free at the Mises Institute. So just type in Cantillon essay on economic theory, and you will find it available to you at the Mises Institute for free. You can download the PDF and read the and read the essay. However, if you do click on that Amazon affiliate link, you can go and put whatever you want into the Amazon affiliate cart or the Amazon cart that you were wanting to buy anyway. And by making that purchase within the next 30 days after clicking on that link, I will also get a commission on those items. So just go click on the link and then just go fill the Amazon cart with whatever it is that you were going to buy anyway, and I'll get a little commission off of those items. So that's another way that you can support the Uneducated Economist. So thank you very much for being here. You're all the best. Consider going to Mike Zuber's One Rental at a Time conference in Vegas, where you can go and meet some of the best people in the world when it comes to understanding real estate, and see me speaking on all my ideas of economic theories so that we can all understand this for ourselves. All right, Uneducated Economist, you let me know.